Hello everybody, welcome to the CopperSpoon Inn and Tavern. My name's Cobb and I run the place. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this most delicious ramen with a semi-homemade bone broth and one of my favorites, pork tonkatsu. With that, let's get into it. First, as you see me doing here, I'm adding all of my ramen ingredients to a big pot. Now, this is something that I would change from the original recipe that I found out afterwards, and I highly suggest doing it every time. Now, whenever you're making a bone broth, there's going to be a bunch of gunk left over in the bone that you don't want in your actual broth. So, what you're going to do is you're actually going to put just your bones in the pot with enough water so that they're fully covered. You're going to boil those for about 15 to 20 minutes, completely strain them, rinse them off, and then throw them back in the pot with the rest of your ingredients. There should be an ingredient list up here on the screen for you, and then what you're going to do is you're going to put that on simmer. Now, you'll see me adding in seaweed right here, and this is not the seaweed I recommend using. I'll throw up on the screen what the seaweed is called, but this is the only thing I could find in my area. It's just regular sushi seaweed / snack seaweed, and it works great for a garnish, but not so much in the broth itself. So if you can find the good stuff, go ahead and use that. Next, we're going to make a soft-boiled eggs. Now, fun fact about me is I don't really like eggs in general. So I am not an expert on how to peel these, but I can tell you that the perfect soft-boiled egg is boiling this egg for 6 minutes at a rolling boil and then throwing it into a pot of ice-cold water. That's going to give you the perfect soft-boiled egg, and I will leave the peeling up to you guys because I am still not 100% sure on how to do it correctly. Putting it in that ice bath is just going to stop the cooking process immediately. I went ahead and immediately deshelled these as soon as it was cool enough to touch, but honestly, I would have probably let it cool down a little bit more. Like I said, I'm no egg expert, but something you can do here is you can flavor your egg. You can throw it in a marinade of soy sauce or teriyaki sauce, or you can pickle it with a little bit of red wine vinegar mixed with sugar and really do a different egg flavor here. So I chose to leave mine plain just because I wasn't going to be eating it anyways, but definitely something fun to play around with. Next, I went ahead and just sliced up my green onions, as well as my seaweed that I was going to use later on for garnish. Alright, next I went ahead and pounded out my pork. I used a meat tenderizer, threw my slab of pork in between just a couple of pieces of parchment paper, and made sure it was about probably a ½ inch thick. You want it to be pretty thin here. You don't want it to be so thin that it's falling apart. You still want a little bit of heft to it, but you want to make sure it's tenderized and pounded out so it's just a little bit thinner than where you started from. This is really going to give you that super tender, nice consistency when you actually have your pork later on. This is an important step in my mind. I highly recommend doing it. Now, I wouldn't normally recommend putting raw food on a wooden cutting board. It looks very good for videos, but it's not very good health-wise. So if you're doing this, make sure you put a generous amount of olive oil on your cutting board before you start, and that creates a sort of barrier between the wood and the actual raw meat so that the wood doesn't soak it up and keep any germs in it. Next, I mix together my flour mixture, my egg mixture, and my panko breadcrumb mixture with just a bit of salt, paprika, and pepper. Now, you can kind of see me doing it here in the speed run, but I kept one hand for my dry mixes and one hand for my wet mixes, which means I use the same hand to dip the flour and the panko breadcrumbs, and then a different hand to dip the eggs, and that just keeps the whole process of breading a lot easier. As you can see, go into the flour first, then the eggs, then the panko. Then I got my pan of oil heating. It's going to seem like a lot of oil, but you want a nice thick layer so that your pork gets crispy all around the edges as well as each side. I strained my broth through a cheesecloth. This is going to catch all of the tiny little bits that want to try to strain through there, and then went ahead and let that cool a little bit while I got the pork ready to go. This is not going to take long at all. This took me about probably 3 to 5 minutes on each side, just until it was nice and golden brown. Go ahead and give it enough time to get nice and crispy, but since we pounded out that pork and it's very thin, it's not going to take long to cook at all. Like you see here, it's nice and golden brown. You want to get that on both sides, and then you're going to set it on a wire rack or a paper towel lined pan to drain some of the grease off, and you're going to hit it with just a little bit of salt once you set it aside to drain and to cool off. I got my ramen boiling, and once it's fully cooked, we are all ready to assemble. First, I chopped up my pork. I also cut my egg in half later, but you can hear it. It's just so crispy and delicious. Honestly, even if you don't want to go through the process of making your own ramen broth, this pork tonkatsu recipe is worth it. I highly recommend trying it. And then you can just add whatever you want. I topped mine with a hoisin sauce as well as some sesame seeds, and then I just enjoyed, and I hope you guys do too.